The city of Chicago was alive with its usual chaos. Cars honked impatiently on the crowded streets, people rushed to their destinations under flickering streetlights, and the occasional siren wailed in the distance. It was just another night for Detective Alex Carter, a man who had spent nearly 2 decades wearing the badge. He sat in his patrol car, parked near the corner of Michigan Avenue, sipping cold coffee from a paper cup. The rain drizzled down steadily, making the asphalt glisten beneath the glow of neon signs. Alex wasn't having a good day, or week, or month for that matter. His department had been under fire lately, accused of corruption and misconduct by everyone from local activists to national news outlets. Investigations into dirty cops seemed endless, yet nothing ever stuck. Every time Alex thought he was close to exposing someone, higher-ups would step in, burying evidence or transferring key players out of reach. It left him bitter, tired, and questioning why he even bothered anymore. He leaned back in his seat, staring at the drops racing each other down the windshield. Then, like a jolt of electricity, his radio crackled to life. Dispatch reported a reckless driver speeding north on Michigan Avenue, weaving dangerously through traffic. Witnesses described a black luxury sedan running red lights and nearly sideswiping pedestrians. Without hesitation, Alex grabbed his hat, switched on the sirens, and pulled onto the road. It didn't take long to spot the car, a sleek, expensive model that screamed wealth. The driver was pushing it hard, cutting off slower vehicles and leaving skid marks at every turn. Alex followed closely, his tires splashing through puddles as he matched the sedan's pace. Finally, after a tense chase, the car slowed and pulled over onto the shoulder of a dimly lit side street. Alex parked behind it, stepped out into the rain and approached cautiously. The window rolled down slowly, revealing the face of none other than Richard Langley, the U.S. Attorney General. Alex recognized him immediately. Langley's stern expression and perfectly tailored suit were fixtures in the media. For a moment, Alex hesitated. This wasn't some ordinary citizen. It was one of the most powerful men in the country. But duty called, and Alex reminded himself that no one was above the law. "Good evening, sir," Alex said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm Detective Alex Carter with the Chicago Police Department. Do you know why I pulled you over?" Langley glanced up at him, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Detective?" he asked, his tone dripping with disdain. "You're wasting my time. I have important matters to attend to." "I'm sure you do, sir," Alex replied evenly. "But right now you're breaking several laws. Reckless driving, running red lights. That sort of thing doesn't fly here, no matter who you are." Langley scoffed, leaning back in his seat, as if bored. "Do you have any idea who I am? I'm the U.S. Attorney General. I don't answer to small-town cops like you." Alex clenched his jaw, trying to keep his composure. "With all due respect, sir, tonight you're just another driver on my beat. Now, may I see your license and registration, please?" For a moment, Langley didn't move. Then, with deliberate slowness, he reached into his glove compartment and handed over the requested documents. As Alex examined them, he noticed Langley watching him intently, his lips curled into a smug smile. It was clear the man thought this whole situation was beneath him. "Sir," Alex began, handing the papers back, "you were seen driving recklessly and endangering civilians. I'll need to issue you a citation." "A citation?" Langley laughed, the sound sharp and condescending. "You think a little ticket will stop me? You're pathetic. Men like you don't understand real power. Maybe you should find another line of work." Each word felt like a punch to Alex's gut. He'd heard insults before, but coming from someone like Langley, it stung differently. All those years of sacrifice, of working late nights and risking, his life reduced to nothing more than pathetic by a man who probably hadn't faced real hardship in his life. Something inside Alex snapped. Before he realized what he was doing, Alex yanked open the car door and gestured for Langley to step out. "Get out of the car," he ordered, his voice low and dangerous. "What are you doing?" Langley demanded, his arrogance faltering for the first time. "Do you have any idea what you're messing with?" "I said get out." Alex repeated, louder this time. Reluctantly, Langley complied, stepping into the rain. A small crowd of curious onlookers began gathering nearby, pulling out their phones to record the scene. Alex ignored them, focusing instead on the man standing in front of him. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" Alex spat, his anger bubbling over. "Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Attorney General. Out here, you're just another guy who needs to follow the rules. And if you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be driving at all." Without thinking, Alex drew his service weapon and pointed it at Langley, holding it steady despite the tremor in his hands. Gasps rippled through the crowd and Langley's face turned pale. For a brief second, time seemed to freeze. Rain continued to fall, mixing with the tension in the air. Then, just as quickly as he had drawn it, Alex lowered the gun. He holstered it and took a deep breath, struggling to regain control of himself. "Go home, Mr. Langley," he said finally, his voice quieter now. "And remember this the next time you decide to play games with people's lives." Langley didn't say a word. He climbed back into his car and sped off, leaving Alex standing alone in the rain. The crowd dispersed slowly, murmuring among themselves. Someone had already uploaded the video online, and within minutes, it went viral. By morning, the entire nation would know about the cop who humiliated the U.S. Attorney General and pointed a gun at him. As Alex returned to his patrol car, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had crossed a line. Whether it was justified or not, there was no going back now. The next morning, Alex woke up to a storm. Not the kind outside his window, but the one brewing in the media. He turned on the television while making coffee, and there it was. Footage of him pointing a gun at Richard Langley, replayed over and over again. News anchors debated whether he was a hero standing up to corruption or an unhinged cop who had gone too far. Social media was ablaze with opinions, hashtags trending across platforms. Some called him brave, others labeled him reckless. At the police station, things were no better. Alex arrived early, hoping to avoid the chaos, but reporters were already camped out front, microphones in hand, shouting questions as he walked through the doors. His colleagues avoided eye contact, pretending to be busy with paperwork or staring at their computer screens. The atmosphere felt heavy, charged with tension. Even Chief Martinez, usually calm and collected, looked uneasy when Alex entered his office. "Sit down, Carter," Martinez said, gesturing toward the chair across from his desk. His tone was serious, almost weary. "You know why I called you in here." Alex nodded, though he didn't say anything. What could he say? Everyone had seen the video by now. There was no denying what had happened. "This is bad, Alex," Martinez continued, leaning forward. "Really bad. You pointed a loaded weapon at the U.S. Attorney General. That's not just misconduct. It's a national scandal. Internal affairs is breathing down my neck, and the mayor's office wants answers. Hell, even the governor called me this morning." "I wasn't planning to shoot him," Alex said defensively. "I just wanted to make a point." "A point?" Martinez raised an eyebrow. "What kind of point did you think you were making? Do you realize how this looks? You humiliated one of the most powerful men in the country, Alex. People don't care about your intentions. They care about the optics. And right now, the optics are terrible." Alex sighed, rubbing his temples. He knew Martinez was right, but that didn't make it easier to hear. "So what happens now?" "For starters, you're suspended without pay, effective immediately," Martinez replied. "Internal Affairs will launch a full investigation. Depending on what they find, you could face criminal charges. I'm sorry, Alex, but there's nothing I can do to protect you this time." Alex nodded again, feeling numb. He'd always known being a cop came with risks, but he never imagined ending up like this. Vilified by the public, abandoned by his department, and facing the possibility of prison. As he left Martinez's office, he could feel the weight of everyone's stares, silent judgments passing between co-workers who once respected him. Outside the station, reporters swarmed him again, shoving microphones in his face and firing off questions faster than he could process them. "Detective Carter, do you regret your actions? Was this an act of personal vendetta? Are you afraid of retaliation from the Attorney General?" Alex pushed past them without answering, climbing into his car and driving away as quickly as possible. By the time he got home, the stress had taken its toll. He poured himself a drink and collapsed onto the couch, flipping through channels only to find more coverage of the incident. Every channel seemed to have a different angle, some portraying him as a rogue vigilante, others as a symbol of resistance against corrupt elites. None of it mattered to Alex anymore. All he wanted was to forget the whole thing ever happened. But forgetting wasn't so easy. Over the next few days, the fallout intensified. National news outlets ran segments dissecting his career, dredging up old cases and painting him as unstable. Former colleagues distanced themselves publicly, eager to avoid association with someone labeled a loose cannon. Even friends stopped calling, unsure of what to say. Isolation crept in, gnawing at Alex's resolve. Amidst the chaos, one person reached out. Linda Meyer, a young journalist working for a local newspaper. She showed up at his door unannounced one evening, holding a notebook and a pen. At first, Alex refused to let her in, assuming she was just another vulture looking for a story. But something about her persistence and sincerity made him reconsider. "I'm not here to attack you, Detective," Linda said earnestly after he finally invited her inside. "I want to understand what really happened that night. Everyone's talking about the video, but no one seems interested in the bigger picture." "The bigger picture?" Alex repeated skeptically. "What bigger picture?" "Langley," Linda explained. "His reputation isn't as spotless as people think. I've been digging into his background and there are inconsistencies, things that don't add up. If you're willing to talk, maybe we can figure out if this was really about you losing control, or something else entirely." Alex hesitated. Trusting a reporter felt risky, especially now. But part of him wanted to believe Linda might actually care about uncovering the truth. Against his better judgment, he agreed to share his side of the story. Over the next hour, they talked about everything: the frustrations of working in a broken system, the arrogance of politicians like Langley, and the moment Alex lost his temper during the traffic stop. Linda listened intently, jotting down notes and asking thoughtful questions. By the end of their conversation, Alex felt a glimmer of hope, not because he thought things would magically improve, but because someone finally seemed willing to look beyond the headlines. Before leaving, Linda promised to dig deeper into Langley's past. "If there's dirt, I'll find it," she said confidently. "And if I do, maybe we can turn this around, for both our sakes." As Alex watched her walk away, he couldn't help but wonder if she was chasing shadows. Still, her determination reminded him of why he became a cop in the first place: to fight for justice no matter how impossible it seemed. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to set things right. For the first time in days, Alex allowed himself to entertain the idea that redemption might not be completely out of reach. Linda Meyer didn't waste any time. The moment she left Alex's apartment, she opened her laptop and began digging into Richard Langley's life. It wasn't easy. Langley was a public figure, and his official record was polished to perfection. But Linda had a knack for finding cracks in even the smoothest facades. She started small, combing through old news articles, court documents, and campaign finance reports. Slowly but surely, patterns began to emerge. One name kept showing up: Victor Kane. Kane was a wealthy industrialist, the kind of man who rarely appeared in the spotlight but always seemed to be pulling strings behind the scenes. His company, Global Tech Industries, specialized in defense contracts, and rumors swirled about its ties to government officials. Linda noticed that several high-profile deals involving Kane's firm coincided with Langley's rise to power. It was circumstantial evidence at best, but it was enough to make her curious. Determined to learn more, Linda reached out to sources she'd built relationships with over the years. There was Carla Dawson, a former lobbyist who had worked closely with Langley during his early days in politics. Then there was Greg Myers, an ex-journalist turned whistleblower who claimed to have dirt on half of Washington, D.C. Both agreed to meet her, albeit reluctantly, warning her not to use their names if she published anything. Carla met Linda at a quiet cafe downtown. Over coffee, she painted a grim picture of Langley's world. "He's not the saint everyone thinks he is," Carla said, glancing around nervously as if afraid someone might overhear. "When he first came into office, he promised transparency and reform, but once he got comfortable, all that talk disappeared. He started cutting deals with people like Kane, trading favors for cash or influence, and anyone who tried to stand in his way, they either quit or were pushed out." "What kind of deals are we talking about?" Linda asked, scribbling notes furiously. "Defense contracts, mostly," Carla replied. "Kane's company would bid on projects and somehow they'd always win, even when other companies offered better terms. Word is Langley made sure of it. In return, Kane funded Langley's campaigns and helped him climb the ladder." Later that week, Linda met Greg at a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of town. Unlike Carla, Greg didn't mince words. "Langley's dirty," he said bluntly, taking a sip of his beer. "But proving it? That's the hard part. He's careful, covers his tracks, uses intermediaries. Still, I've seen enough to know he's not clean." Greg handed Linda a flash drive containing files he'd gathered over the years. "Take a look at these," he said. "There's correspondence between Langley and Kane, financial records, stuff like that. Some of it's encrypted, but you might be able to piece things together." Back at her apartment, Linda spent hours poring over the information. What she found shocked her. Emails revealed coded language discussing payments disguised as charitable donations. Bank statements showed large sums moving between shell companies, linked to Kane and individuals connected to Langley. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was damning enough to suggest something shady was going on. Excited by her findings, Linda called Alex. When he answered, his voice sounded distant, weighed down by everything that had happened. "Hey, Linda," he said. "What's up?" "I think I've got something," she replied, unable to hide her excitement. "Something big. Can we meet? This isn't something I want to discuss over the phone." They arranged to meet at a park near Alex's place. Sitting on a bench beneath a canopy of trees, Linda laid out everything she'd uncovered. At first, Alex listened skeptically, unsure whether to believe her claims. But as she presented document after document, his skepticism gave way to disbelief. And then anger. "This guy's been playing us all along," Alex muttered, staring at the papers in his hands. "All those speeches about integrity and accountability, it was all a lie." "It gets worse," Linda added. "I found mentions of a meeting scheduled for next week. Langley and Kane are supposed to meet at a private estate outside the city. If we can get inside, maybe we can catch them in the act." Alex frowned, shaking his head. "That's insane. Even if we could get close, they'd never let us in. We're not exactly welcome guests." "We don't need an invitation," Linda countered. "We just need a plan, a distraction, maybe some tech to record what happens. If we play our cards right, we can expose them without getting caught." For a long moment, Alex didn't respond. The idea was risky, reckless even, but it was also his only shot at redemption. If he could prove Langley was corrupt, maybe he could salvage what was left of his career. Maybe he could remind himself why he became a cop in the first place. "All right," he said finally. "Let's do it. But we go in smart, not blind. No heroics, no shortcuts. If this goes south, we're both done for." Over the next few days, they prepared meticulously. Linda scouted the location of the meeting, a sprawling mansion surrounded by dense woods, and mapped out potential entry points. She purchased tiny listening devices and cameras capable of capturing audio and video discreetly. Meanwhile, Alex worked on creating a diversion, knowing they'd need to draw attention away from themselves if they wanted to succeed. On the night of the operation, nerves ran high. They parked their car miles away from the estate and hiked through the forest under the cover of darkness. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, made them flinch, convinced they'd been spotted. Finally, they reached the edge of the property, crouching behind bushes as guards patrolled nearby. "You ready?" Alex whispered, checking his watch. "As ready as I'll ever be," Linda replied, clutching the equipment tightly. Taking a deep breath, Alex moved forward, heading toward the front gate. He set off a small smoke bomb he'd brought, causing chaos among the guards as they scrambled to investigate. While they were distracted, Linda slipped onto the grounds unnoticed, planting her devices strategically before retreating back into the shadows. When she rejoined Alex at their rendezvous point, both were breathing heavily, adrenaline coursing through their veins. "Did you get it?" Alex asked, his voice barely audible. "I think so," Linda replied, nodding. "Now we wait." The following morning they reviewed the recordings together. The audio was clear, capturing every word exchanged between Langley and Kane. They spoke openly about manipulating federal policies, ensuring lucrative contracts went to Kane's company in exchange for political support. It was everything they needed, and more. As they listened, Alex felt a mix of emotions: relief, satisfaction, and a lingering sense of unease. They had the evidence, but exposing it wouldn't be easy. Powerful people like Langley and Kane didn't fall without a fight. Still, for the first time in weeks, Alex allowed himself to feel hopeful. Justice might still be within reach, if they were brave enough to pursue it. The morning after planting the listening devices, Alex and Linda met at a small diner on the outskirts of Chicago. It was early, and the place was nearly empty except for a few truckers sipping coffee at the counter. They sat in a corner booth, far from prying eyes, their heads bent close together as they reviewed the recordings one more time. "This is it," Linda whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "This proves everything. Langley's corruption, Kane's involvement, the whole scheme. We can take this to the authorities, blow the lid off this entire operation." Alex nodded slowly, his expression grim. "It's solid evidence, no doubt about that, but we can't just hand it over and expect things to work out. People like Langley and Kane don't get to where they are without having friends in high places. If we're not careful, this could backfire." Linda frowned, leaning back in her seat. "What do you mean?" "The truth is right here. How can they ignore it?" "They won't ignore it," Alex replied, tapping the table lightly with his fingers. "But they'll try to bury it, or worse, they'll come after us. You think Langley's going to sit quietly while we expose him? He'll fight dirty, and so will Kane. We need to be smarter than them." Linda bit her lip, thinking hard. She hadn't considered the risks beyond gathering the evidence. Her focus had been solely on uncovering the truth, but now she realized how dangerous this could become. Still, backing down wasn't an option, not when they were so close. "So what do we do?" she asked finally. "We prepare," Alex said firmly. "We secure the evidence, make copies, and store them in multiple places. If anything happens to us, or if someone tries to destroy it, we need backups. Then we figure out who we can trust to help us. Not many people, mind you, but enough to keep this moving forward." They spent the rest of the day putting their plan into action. Linda uploaded the recordings to encrypted cloud storage and created physical copies on USB drives, hiding them in safe locations around the city. Alex reached out to a couple of old contacts, former colleagues he trusted, though barely. One was Detective Ryan Hughes, a grizzled veteran who hated corruption almost as much as Alex did. The other was Sarah Bennett, a lawyer known for taking on impossible cases. Hughes agreed to meet Alex late that night in an abandoned warehouse near the docks. When Alex arrived, Hughes was already there, leaning against a column with his arms crossed. His face was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed curiosity. "All right, Carter," Hughes said, pushing off the column. "You dragged me out here in the middle of the night. What's so important?" Alex hesitated for a moment, then handed Hughes a folder containing transcripts of the recordings. "Read this," he said simply. Hughes flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. By the time he finished, his jaw was clenched tight. "This is explosive," he muttered. "Where did you get this?" "That doesn't matter," Alex replied. "What matters is whether you're willing to help us use it." Hughes sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You know what you're asking, right? Going up against Langley and Kane isn't just risky, it's suicidal. They've got connections everywhere. Hell, half the department probably owes them favors." "I know," Alex admitted. "But if we don't try, nothing changes. Are you in or not?" After a long pause, Hughes nodded. I'm in, but don't expect miracles. This is going to get ugly. Meanwhile, Linda met with Sarah Bennett at a quiet library cafe. Sarah listened intently as Linda explained the situation, occasionally jotting down notes. When Linda finished, Sarah leaned back, in her chair, her expression thoughtful. It's compelling evidence, Sarah said, but proving it in court will be tricky. Langley and Kane are pros at covering their tracks. Even with this, they'll have lawyers lined up ready to tear it apart. We can't let them win, Linda insisted. If we don't act, they'll keep getting away with it. People like them always do. Sarah smiled faintly. I admire your determination. Count me in. I'll do what I can to protect you legally. But remember, once this goes public, there's no turning back. With reinforcements in place, Alex and Linda returned to planning their next move. They decided to leak portions of the recordings anonymously to select journalists and outlets, ensuring the story gained traction before anyone could suppress it. At the same time, they prepared to present the full evidence to federal investigators, hoping the weight of the scandal would force action. But as they worked, paranoia began to creep in. Every shadow seemed suspicious, every stranger potentially hostile. One evening, while driving home from meeting Hughes, Alex noticed a black sedan trailing him. He took several turns trying to lose it, but the car stayed close behind. Heart pounding, Alex sped up, weaving through traffic until he finally managed to shake it. When he called Linda to tell her what happened, she sounded shaken but resolute. They know we're on to them, she said. We have to move faster. The final piece of their plan fell into place when Sarah arranged a secret meeting with an FBI agent she trusted. The agent, a man named Agent Peterson, agreed to review the evidence discreetly. If convinced, he promised to escalate the case internally, bypassing any potential leaks within the Bureau. On the day of the meeting, Alex and Linda arrived at a secluded park, carrying copies of the recordings. Peterson waited for them near a bench, his demeanor calm but serious. After listening to the audio and examining the documents, he nodded slowly. This is damning, he said. If authentic, it could bring down Langley and Kane. But you understand the risks, right? Once we start, there's no stopping it. We understand, Alex replied, glancing at Linda. And we're ready. As Peterson left with the evidence, Alex felt a mix almost immediately, however. The sense of accomplishment was overshadowed by a growing unease. They had taken a massive step, but the real battle was just beginning. Langley and Kane wouldn't go down without a fight, and Alex knew they were running out of time. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Alex replayed every decision he'd made since the traffic stop. He wondered if he'd done the right thing, if exposing the truth was worth the cost. But deep down, he knew there was no other choice. Justice might be messy, complicated, and painful, but it was still worth fighting for, and fight they would. The days following their meeting with Agent Peterson were tense. Alex and Linda stayed in constant communication, waiting for any sign that the FBI was moving forward with the case. But silence stretched on, leaving them uneasy. Had the evidence been enough? Or had Langley and Kane already found a way to block it? Their fears weren't unfounded. One evening, as Alex returned to his apartment, he noticed something strange. His front door was slightly ajar. His heart sank. He drew his gun cautiously, pushing the door open wider and stepping inside. The place had been ransacked, drawers pulled out, furniture overturned, papers scattered across the floor. Someone had been searching for something, Alex cursed under his breath, holstering his weapon. It didn't take long to realize what they were after: the backup copies of the recordings. Thankfully, he'd hidden them well, but the message was clear. Langley and Kane knew they were onto something, and they weren't going to sit idly by. Linda wasn't faring much better. Her car tire was slashed one morning, and later that day she received an anonymous call. A distorted voice warned her to drop it or face consequences. She hung up quickly, her hands shaking, but refused to back down. Instead, she doubled down on security measures, installing cameras around her apartment and carrying pepper spray wherever she went. Despite the threats, they pressed on. Finally, late one night, Alex's phone buzzed. It was Agent Peterson. "We're ready," The agent said tersely. Meet me at the safe house tomorrow morning. Don't tell anyone, not even your lawyer. Relief washed over Alex, but it was short-lived. He called Linda immediately, filling her in on the plan. They agreed to meet early the next day, packing only essentials and leaving separately to avoid drawing attention. The safe house was an unassuming cabin deep in the woods, miles from the nearest town. When Alex and Linda arrived, Peterson was already there, along with 2 other agents. The group wasted no time getting down to business. We've reviewed the evidence thoroughly, Peterson explained, spreading documents across the table. It's strong enough to warrant federal charges against both Langley and Kane. But we need more than just recordings. We need witnesses who can testify under oath. Alex nodded grimly. I'll do it, he said without hesitation. I'm the one who planted the devices. I'll take responsibility. And I'll testify too, Linda added firmly. I gathered most of the intel. If they want someone to blame, they can start with me. Peterson studied them for a moment, then sighed. You're putting yourselves in the line of fire. Once this goes public, you won't have a moment's peace, are you sure? They exchanged a glance before nodding in unison. There was no turning back now. Over the next few hours, they rehearsed their statements, ensuring every detail aligned perfectly. Peterson emphasized the importance of staying calm during questioning, warning them that Langley's lawyers would try to discredit them at every turn. By the time they finished, exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone, but a sense of purpose kept them going. Early the next morning, the FBI launched its operation. Teams raided Langley's office and Kane's headquarters simultaneously, seizing computers, files, and financial records. News outlets erupted with coverage, speculating about the sudden crackdown. Within hours, Langley and Kane were brought in for questioning. But Langley wasn't ready to surrender. Using his influence, he managed to delay the investigation temporarily, citing legal technicalities. Meanwhile, Kane's team worked tirelessly to discredit the evidence, claiming it had been fabricated. The pressure mounted as leaks suggested internal divisions within the FBI, with some agents allegedly sympathetic to Langley's side. Fearing the worst, Alex and Linda decided to go public themselves. With Sarah Bennett's guidance, they held a press conference presenting key excerpts from the recordings and sharing their story. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as they spoke. This isn't about revenge, Alex said, his voice steady despite the chaos. It's about accountability. Richard Langley and Victor Kane think they're untouchable, but they're not. No one is above the law. Linda took over, her tone firm yet emotional. For years, these men have exploited their power for personal gain. They've silenced dissent, manipulated policies, and hurt countless lives in the process. We're here today to say, enough is enough. The press conference sent shockwaves through the nation. Public outrage grew, fueled by mounting evidence of corruption. Protesters gathered outside government buildings demanding justice. Even some politicians began distancing themselves from Langley, sensing the tide turning against him. But retribution came swiftly. That night, as Alex and Linda left the venue, they were ambushed by a group of armed men. Shots rang out, shattering windows and sending bystanders screaming for cover. Alex tackled Linda to the ground, shielding her with his body as bullets whizzed past. Chaos reigned until police sirens wailed in the distance, forcing the attackers to flee. Shaken but alive, Alex and Linda were rushed to a nearby hospital for evaluation. Though neither was seriously injured, the message was clear. Langley and Kane weren't done fighting. Back at the safe house, Peterson delivered sobering news. They're trying to intimidate us, he said. But we can't let them win. We've got eyewitness accounts from the press conference, plus surveillance, footage identifying the shooters. This could actually work in our favor. Determined to see it through, Alex and Linda prepared for the final showdown, testifying before a grand jury. Under heavy guard, they entered the courthouse, surrounded by reporters and supporters alike. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Langley sat stoically beside his high-powered attorneys, while Kane glared daggers from across the room. One by one, Witnesses took the stand, recounting everything from shady deals to illegal payments. When it was Alex's turn, he walked forward with quiet resolve, answering each question honestly and directly. Linda followed, her testimony bolstered by meticulous documentation of her findings. By the end of the day, the courtroom felt electric. Jurors whispered among themselves, clearly moved by the overwhelming evidence. As the proceedings concluded, the judge announced that formal charges would be filed against Langley and Kane, pending further review. Outside, crowds cheered as Alex and Linda emerged, their faces pale but triumphant. For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves to hope. Justice might still be messy and imperfect, but it was finally within reach. And yet, as they drove away from the courthouse, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the fight wasn't truly over. Powerful people like Langley and Kane rarely disappeared, quietly. Still, for now, they had struck a blow. A reminder that even in a broken system, courage and determination could spark change. The weeks that followed the grand jury hearing were a whirlwind of activity. News outlets continued to cover every development, dissecting the case from every angle. Richard Langley and Victor Kane, once untouchable figures, were now public enemies. Protesters filled the streets holding signs that read "Justice for all" and "No more corruption." The nation watched as the legal process unfolded, eager to see whether justice would truly prevail. For Alex Carter and Linda Meyer, life became a strange mix of triumph and tension. On one hand, they were hailed as heroes by many, ordinary citizens who saw them as symbols of resistance against systemic corruption. Strangers approached them in grocery stores and cafes, thanking them for their bravery. Supporters sent letters and messages of encouragement, praising their determination to hold powerful people accountable. But on the other hand, danger still loomed. Despite the charges filed against Langley and Kane, both men remained free on bail, using their vast resources to mount aggressive defenses. Their lawyers argued that the evidence was circumstantial, accusing Alex and Linda of fabricating the recordings and planting false information. It was clear they weren't going down without a fight, and neither were their allies. Threats continued to pour in. Someone slashed Alex's tires again, and Linda found her apartment door vandalized with spray paint reading, "Liar." Anonymous. Calls grew more frequent, each voice colder and angrier than the last. One night, a brick was thrown through Linda's living room window, narrowly missing her as she sat on the couch. The message was unmistakable: back off or face worse. Yet despite the fear, neither Alex nor Linda wavered. They leaned on each other for support, finding strength in their shared mission. Detective Ryan Hughes and Sarah Bennett stayed close too, offering protection and advice whenever needed. Even Agent Peterson checked in regularly, updating them on the investigation's progress and reassuring them that justice was moving forward. As the trial date approached, preparations intensified. Alex and Linda worked closely with prosecutors, reviewing testimony and strategizing how to counter Langley and Kane's defense tactics. They knew the courtroom battle would be brutal, but they also knew they had truth on their side, a rare advantage in a world often clouded by lies. The trial began on a chilly morning in early December. Reporters packed the courtroom, cameras rolling as jurors filed in. Langley and Kane sat side by side at the defendant's table, flanked by their high-powered attorneys. Their expressions were calm, almost smug, as if confident they could outmaneuver the system yet again. Alex took the stand first. Under questioning, he recounted the events leading up to the traffic stop, the moment he confronted Langley, and the subsequent discovery of the conspiracy. His testimony was steady and unwavering, even as Langley's lawyers tried to paint him as unstable and vindictive. When asked why he had risked so much to expose the truth, Alex simply said, "Because it was the right thing to do." Linda followed, detailing her investigation into Langley and Kane's dealings. She presented documents, emails, and financial records, connecting the dots for the jury. Her professionalism and dedication shone through, silencing attempts to discredit her as an overzealous journalist. By the time she stepped down, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that she had uncovered something monumental. As the days passed, Witnesses piled on, each adding another layer to the damning picture. Former lobbyists, whistleblowers, and even disgruntled employees from global tech industries came forward, corroborating Alex and Linda's claims. Every piece of evidence pointed to one undeniable conclusion. Langley and Kane had abused their power for personal gain, betraying the public trust. Finally, after weeks of testimony, closing arguments arrived. The prosecutor delivered a passionate speech, urging the jury to uphold justice and send a message that no one, not even the most powerful individuals, was above the law. Langley and Kane's attorneys countered with technicalities and character attacks, but their words felt hollow compared to the mountain of evidence stacked against them. When the jury retired to deliberate, the weight felt unbearable. Alex and Linda sat together in a quiet corner of the courthouse, speaking little but drawing comfort from each other's presence. Hours turned into days as the deliberations dragged on. Outside, crowds gathered, holding vigil in anticipation of the verdict. Then, finally it came. The courtroom buzzed with nervous energy as the foreman stood to deliver the decision. Guilty. Both Langley and Kane were found guilty on multiple counts of corruption, fraud, and conspiracy. A collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by applause from spectators. Tears streamed down Linda's face as Alex let out a shaky breath, overwhelmed by the weight of what they had achieved. In the aftermath, the fallout was swift and sweeping. Langley resigned his position as U.S. Attorney General, his political career in ruins. Kane's company faced investigations, leading to its eventual collapse. Dozens of others implicated in their schemes were arrested, unraveling a web of corruption that stretched far beyond Chicago. For Alex, redemption came slowly. He was reinstated to the police force, though not without scars. Some colleagues still viewed him with suspicion, while others admired his courage. Chief Martinez personally apologized for doubting him, acknowledging that Alex had done what many feared to do. Though he returned to work, Alex carried a newfound awareness of the challenges inherent in fighting for justice. Linda, meanwhile, published her exposé, earning widespread acclaim for her investigative work. Her article won awards, cementing her reputation as a fearless journalist willing to take risks for the truth. Offers poured in from major publications, but she chose to stay local, believing her roots were where she could make the biggest difference. Though their paths diverged professionally, Alex and Linda remained connected by their shared experience. They met occasionally for coffee or dinner, reflecting on the journey they had endured together. Both knew the fight wasn't over. The system still needed fixing, but they also knew they had struck a blow against corruption that would resonate for years to come. One evening, as Alex walked the streets of Chicago, he paused beneath a flickering streetlight. The city was alive with its usual chaos, but tonight it felt different. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel hopeful. Justice might be imperfect, messy, and hard-won, but it was worth fighting for, one case at a time. And so, with a renewed sense of purpose, Alex continued his work, determined to honor the badge he wore and the people he served. In doing so, he reminded himself, and everyone around him, that even in the darkest moments, courage and integrity could light the way forward.